Hey Internet, welcome back to What's the Points? I'm Mike. Wanted to mention to you today what I feel are the top 5 ways to get solid value on domestic travel. In this game we see, in my opinion, an oversized emphasis on international travel, which as much as I love it and as fun as it is, let's be honest, sometimes if we want to get away, domestic is really our only option. Especially if you're visiting family or friends or catching up on places that you're actually really familiar with. There remains, I believe, an underserved need for finding those sweet spots because there's not as many of them. So without wasting any of your time, here we go. Number 1 is the U.S. Bank Altitude Reserve. This card is one of my favorites because it gives a 3% catch-all cash back when you use your mobile wallet. So that takes all of the guesswork out, which is great. And then you get a 50% boost when you redeem your points for any travel through just spending the card on travel purchases, which is nice. You can use their travel portal through US Bank, but you don't have to. That's a huge plus. If you're using their program, it's called Real-Time Rewards. There's their own branding for a system that once you set it up through their website, as soon as you make any travel purchase above a certain threshold, I believe it's $25, depends on the type. There's 1 or 2 types of travel, I think, that have to be a higher threshold, like car rentals. But for the most part, most things, it's pretty straightforward. And you get a text and it says, do you want to use real-time rewards? You hit yes, and that's it. You've done your redemption. One of the big strengths with this is that sure, you're redeeming points, but you're still paying cash, as it were. So when you're buying either, let's say, airline tickets or hotel rooms, you're still going to have points earned. Those are revenue bookings, so you're going to earn points, work towards loyalty, status, etc. So that's in a pinch, you get it on the earning and the redemption side. And so actually, taking a pause here, I just wanted to say that we're always looking at how to earn, the big sign-up bonus over here and earning rates and multipliers over there. And I got to say, I don't think we put as much emphasis on the redemption side and the strategy that we have for that. And that's really what I'm getting at with this video here is that, sure, it's great to build up a stockpile. But if you're like me, as you're starting to get more experience in this, you're realizing, wow, I'm sitting on a lot of different points and miles that are not as easy to use as I thought they were. Check out my last video I made about this to that effect if you want to learn a little bit more about how the strategy works. So that's number 1. Number 2 is Chase Sapphire Reserve, along with their Sapphire Preferred and the Ink Preferred cards. Each of those give you 1.5 or 1.25 respectively boost on redeeming your points for any travel booking through the Chase travel portal. So there's a disadvantage there, but the advantage of it is that the airline, at least, not so much the hotel, but the airlines at least will see that as a revenue fare, and you'll still earn points and progress towards loyalty if you care about that. Not as much on the hotel side, but it's a really reliable way to get good value because you have that floor, especially with the Chase Sapphire Reserve. You're rarely going to get above 1.5 cents per point. And so this is, especially if you have the reserve, I can justify the reserve in my use case. Probably the majority of people will have to settle for to break even as far as high annual fees, probably the Ink Preferred or the Sapphire Preferred. Because you're usually not going to do that much better than that in terms of how you would spend your points, even transferable points. And we'll get to that in a minute. So that's a really solid way to ensure that you are getting decent value for your points. You could save those points, these ultimate rewards points, either to use on Hyatt or to transfer to airlines. But that's, you're better off actually using the other cards ecosystems. So Hyatts don't have the biggest footprint, but you can fairly easily and reliably, and in most of the time, get upwards of 2 cents per point, sometimes even better. But watch out, there are some in the mid-range you might find, especially around category 5, I find 5 or 6 or so, right in that mid-range that, especially on the West Coast, I've found, where you don't get as good value in your point bookings. And in those cases, you might want to consider actually booking them with cash. Which leads me to point number 3 is mid-range hotel credit cards. What I mean by mid-range are usually cards that are about $100 and include a free night certificate, because not only are you easily going to get over that value with that certificate, with all the different programs that I know, with Marriott, with IHG, with Hilton, and even with Hyatt. Even though their card is probably the weakest of the bunch, even though they have the generally the best program as far as their relationship with Chase and the value you get with Ultimate Rewards. Each of these cards are a fairly foolproof way to diversify and ensure that you, at any given point, have free, if you don't mind tracking them. And so this is always this strategy here of how much are you willing to track in order to try to get better value. For example, one of the downsides is that if it's only one night, how many places are you going where you're only staying one night? See what I mean? So maybe that's not a big issue for you. You pay for the other 2 in cash, but maybe you don't like doing cash bookings. Maybe you would prefer to spend everything on points, and that's fine. You could use these cards to earn points, but keep in mind that their earn rates, when used, especially outside of when you're spending on hotel purchases, are pretty bad. So you got to look at that and and really think through your strategy of how you're going to make those hotel bookings work for you. But the benefits alone is really where you should focus on there, less so than the earnings and the redemption side. The benefits as well as the free night certificate. And number 5 is airline co-branded cards. That's a little bit more controversial in this space, especially for people who are not loyal to a particular airline. I've come back around a little bit to this, though, at least from the vantage of sign-up bonuses. And if you take a look at any given moment, you're going to see elevated sign-up bonuses with any of the major legacy carriers in the U.S. There's plenty of options. The most popular, of course, is Southwest. Really, that should get its own bullet point in this. We know there's some uncertainty with how they're going to be changing their boarding process, maybe for the better. But we'll see how long it takes them to work out those kinks. It's taken me a while to learn how to play the Southwest game well in order to make it a viable option. And there are some tricks there, and it's worth. Especially if you're traveling with your significant other, whoever you define as your player 2 for the Southwest Companion Pass. That's the top. That really is the top perk in this whole game, if you can get that. And that's with Chase. And usually you got to open a couple different Southwest cards to do that. That takes a little bit of strategy for sure. But if you can do that, yeah, that's the best way to get out. But even outside of that one, the Delta cards now have really seen a significant upgrade. Again, if you don't mind the extra work of tracking more and more credits. United, the mid-range cards, it depends on how many bags you're checking. I try not to have to check too many bags, but let's be honest, those fees add up quick. So if you're checking any bags at all, it definitely makes sense to hold an airline card. Take a look at the airline cards. Not necessarily all of them are keepers ultimately, but some of them are. If you're planning on flying, sometimes at least once or twice a year, you can get your annual fee back on those. And just a really easy example is United opens up additional Saver Award space just for having a card. So you could literally just have their no annual fee United Gateway card and still have access to that perk. So take a look at the airline cards. They're very, very useful, and a lot of those benefits you have access to just by having the card. You don't actually have to spend anything on it. Although I just learned from my colleague Josh that United, they they don't actually extend the benefits to you unless you bought your ticket with your United card. So that was news to me. I'm glad I learned that trick because wouldn't want to miss out on all those baggage fees. For number 6 out of our list of top 5, this is expert mode. And what we're looking at is how to make domestic redemptions using partner award bookings. Some typical examples with this is using Avianca or Turkish or Air Canada to book United flights. Those are becoming less and less common, though. Searching for them is kind of a bore. And, as I'm starting to get more used to tools like Seats.aero and other point searching tools, as far as I know, none of them have a way to create a specific alert for when domestic inventory opens up on a partner carrier. If you guys know how to do this, I would please add a comment below. I would love to know how to set an alert because, most of the flights I look at on United right now, especially in more popular times, like I was trying to do some cross-country travel next summer. It was available in the spring a little bit, but when I looked in summer, there was just nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. So I know United's getting more stingy with what they're releasing to their partners. So, and then you got to take into account the fact that a lot of these partner airlines have less flexible policies on cancellation and have much higher fees. I know that with depending on the distance, Air Canada can be up to like $150, I believe, just to get your miles back. So if you're talking about booking a flight that's worth maybe $300, it's just not worth it. Now, if you have round trip for 2, or especially multi-city, and you need to make a change, then maybe that's not so bad. It's a lot of extra complexity and risk just to get a little bit more for your miles. It's a good strategy if you're too flush. If you're too flush in other points that you're trying to get through, with Amex membership rewards or with Capital One Venture miles, that could be a good play. Somewhat more common, I think, is Delta on Virgin. I've been fairly flush in Delta miles from sign-up bonuses, so I haven't needed to do that. But I've heard that can sometimes be a good way to do it. And last mention is booking American Airlines using British Airways, although from what I've heard, that it's rarely you're actually even going to get as good of a rate as you would with AA miles directly. And AA miles are somewhat easy to earn on their own, even though they're not a transfer partner with any bank. Using shopping portals and such, I've been able to earn a fair amount of AA miles. So that's something you might take a look at. That's all I got for you today. Happy travels out there. If you have any other surefire domestic travel strategies that have helped you save money, because let's be honest, that's where this is. That's where the rubber meets the road. We can talk all day long about how big our stash of points and miles we've earned is, but unless we have a good strategy up front, we're not necessarily likely to improve our experience or save money. So with that, ciao.